Welcome to the family with.
Andy Brant Bernard.
Co-host Kathryn Brandt.
See, that's everyone.
Your friend Chris Eggert
Yeah.
just posted a steak that looks like Minnesota.
Let me see it.
Well, okay, then.
Of all things.
Good to know.
You're right. It looks like
you're
Minnesota.
grilling a steak and you see a shape.
Well, can I hold this up to the screen? But
Yeah, you could.
Yeah,
up
but I
to the
mean-
camera.
but it doesn't give his address or anything on there, does it?
Well, he's on Twitter, so I'm sure he doesn't care if you follow him. Does that look like Minnesota to you, Andy?
Look at that steak.
It
Too
does
much
look like,
reflection.
I mean, it's kind of hard to see, but you can definitely see the silhouette of Minnesota. in there.
Yeah, it does look like a steak that looks like Minnesota. He's absolutely right about that.
That's funny.
He nailed it. So anyway, we just came back, and there were about 80 billion different things going on. And
80
it just,
billion, that's all?
With the snow apocalypse that ended up being like 4 inches of snow.
Oh, I thought we got 8.5.
Maybe.
I didn't get 8.5. Our driveway, I shoveled it last night. Easy peasy.
Yeah, Chris Eggert said they got the 8.5 inches of snow in the metro area, but out where you are, probably not. Maybe not.
Not so much, although some, like minutes after the snow started falling, someone careened off the road, slammed into a pole, and cut power to the city.
Isn't it amazing?
It took like no time.
It just
It has to be
amazing.
psychological because like the snow can't have even made the roads slick yet. It's not even possible.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking because you haven't had any blizzards yet this year, right?
No, and I don't think we're gonna.
Right. And so we finally are getting some snow. So everybody's like, yeah, snow. Oh my
Yep.
God. Ah. So it just
Yeah.
turns into a big, big, big deal.
But I mean, did St. Cloud, they were talking about St. Cloud getting like 2 feet of snow. Did that even happen?
Yeah, they said that up north things are a lot worse.
Oh, is that right?
And by up north, I mean St. Cloudish
Like
area.
St. Cloudish area. Yeah, so you got about the heat. Well, Chris Eggert said 8.5 inches of snow, but out where you are, you got about 4 inches, Andy.
I don't know how much we got, but that's maybe
Not a
6. Not enough to really matter.
Do you think maybe the news like overplays it just so you'll tune in?
They do it every year. Every year we have a snow
Yes.
apocalypse. We're going to be 2 feet of snow, unable to leave our houses. Get
I
your
remember-
kerosene lamps ready, and it never ever happens. It's
Yeah.
happened. I think we've had like 2 major blizzards in my entire life, like where you
Yeah.
couldn't leave the house.
And the one was on Halloween, so there you go.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like every 20 years.
We just finished that series, True Detective, where
Oh, God, was
it's
that
based in
good.
Alaska with Jodie Foster, and there's this, full out blizzard. Just terrible. And they're out there, and they don't even have their parkas zipped up all the way, and they're out there. They're out there picking through ice, and they're going to go on some sort of expedition to find some evidence. I'm like, you don't understand a blizzard. You can't go out in it.
No,
you
you
can't find
cannot.
your way back.
You can't see, you can't hear. Yeah,
And I
it's-
don't care what kind of parka you have on. I don't think you can survive in sub-zero weather in a blizzard for very long.
No, it takes like 5 minutes or something to start getting frostbite if
Yeah,
you
I'm like-
have exposed skin in a
Yeah,
blizzard.
they should have consulted with somebody from Minneapolis before they decided to shoot
Yeah.
these things with the open parkas in a blizzard.
Mhm.
Yeah, they did have. They did not have their parkas zipped up either. That's true. They did not.
know. It's like
It's about 30 below.
I can't even imagine the kind of gear that you would have to survive in an Alaskan blizzard.
Yeah.
She is a terrific actor, though. God,
She
she's
is
good.
She really is.
Just
Always liked her.
since she was 12 years old. Well, Taxi Driver. I think she was 12 when she did that movie.
Yeah, and she's like one of the few child actresses that I don't know if she
Go
turned out.
insane.
Well, she's never been, I don't think she's been like a drug addict or hurting people
No,
or,
no.
doing anything psycho at all. So
No, she did. How long does the several days of darkness go on in Alaska? Is it?
It depends on where you are,
I
but
thought it was
there's
40 days.
there's
45
one
days.
place up in the northern part that I think it's like 3 months.
It is 3 months.
Well, they're in Ennis.
they're in Ennis,
Ennis. I don't know how
Ennis,
far north that is.
Alaska is not real. So there you go.
Oh, wow. What's it?
It is
supposed to be?
based on North Slope Borough, Alaska.
Okay. And
And North Slope Borough, Alaska is in the very northernmost point. So
Oh.
yeah, they could get months of darkness, I believe.
Isn't there some place on Earth that gets 6 months of darkness somewhere?
Maybe the Arctic Circle.
Let's
Yeah,
see,
maybe.
2 months. Yeah, North Slope, 2 months of darkness.
2 months, not
2 months
6 months.
of
That's a
darkness.
lot.
That's a lot of darkness.
Two, 2 months without any sunlight at all.
And then 2 months of total daylight.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then 2 months of no night.
So my question
Fun.
is, after watching that, why would you move to Ennis, Alaska, which isn't even real in the first place? But why the hell would you move there?
Well, North Slope Borough has a population of 11,000.
Really?
Yeah, this town up in inhospitable wilderness is actually not tiny.
Are they mostly
I'm guessing oil.
Oil people and Inuits.
maybe Inuits, maybe?
Well, yeah,
Stay
there's
up
a
there.
lot of that
Maybe
too.
that's where their settlement was. I don't know.
Let's see,
There you
2020
go.
census. Yes, it's like 60% American Indian.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I see
So
that
there you
Ann
go.
is in studio.
Yes, she is.
There she is right there, big smile on her face, looking professorial in her glasses. Anne, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Magnificent, as a matter of fact. Although I just read your bio, and there's a part in there that made me very sad, but because we both had a son named Andrew. That's very, very difficult, Anne. I'm so sorry to hear about that. He's only 16 or 28, excuse me. He's 28 years
Yeah,
old.
thank you.
So God bless you, Anne. But it's so interesting. Maybe it's just me, Anne, but just because he had the same name as my Andrew, who's on the show with us right now, our Andrew, I should say, because Kathryn's also on the show. But God bless you. I just should not happen to anybody. Ann Bauer has written 3 novels: A Wild Ride Up the Cupboard, with also the Forever Marriage. Now, Kathryn and I have been married. July 7th, it'll be 40 years. Is that a forever marriage?
I mean, that's pretty forever. Really, I have
Feels
to
like
say, my hat's off.
To her or me?
Well,
it's a long
she and I
time,
will
honey.
talk later.
Most people are in their 90s that are married 40 years.
That's probably true. Yeah, we've been together for 44 years, been married for, well, like I said, July 7th, it'll be 40. What do you mean, oh my God? I'm celebrating it, Ann, and she's over there
This
complaining.
makes me feel so old.
40 years is a long time to do
These
anything.
numbers make me feel really old.
Yep.
I don't like them.
I suppose that's probably true. Ann, where did you grow up?
Mostly here in Minnesota.
I thought so, yeah.
Lived in Minnetonka, and I moved away when I was about 18. Actually, I moved out of my house when I was 15.
Oh,
I was a different kid.
so it wasn't your choice to move out? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, it was my choice. Yeah. Yeah. I did not kind of fit the Minnetonka mystique of the 80s. I was not that kid.
That's pretty interesting, Ann, because I feel the same way. There are certain areas of Minnetonka are just really cool, and they go out boating and doing this, that, and the other thing. But there are parts of that lake, and it's a huge lake if people have never been there. I don't even know how many miles. It's like 500 miles of shoreline or something.
It's
like
a
that.
lot, big lake.
It is a huge, huge lake. But there are some pockets, you're right, Ann, where the people are like, not my kind of people. I gotta be honest.
It was so certain. It was so like, we have arrived, we are new money, we have our Farrah Fawcett haircuts. We're like, it was not my scene. I was small and weird and dark and, kind of wordy.
Wordy. Well, that's
So,
good.
yeah, I took off early.
But didn't you just describe a good writer? Aren't good writers all kind of shaped like that?
I mean, maybe every once in a while I meet one who's well adjusted, and I'm always like, oh my
Really?
God, how do you do that? I'm like, really? You have a real life, and then you sit down and write, and how does this work? But yeah, it was probably the breeding ground for a malcontent and a disruptor. That's how I describe myself these days. I disrupt every group I'm in, and it doesn't matter. I move to the group that all thinks they're disruptors, and then I disrupt them.
That's a problem, man.
It's a lifestyle, Tom. That's how I think of
I
it.
love it.
Yeah, that does work. No question about it. I got to read this again because this is very, very impressive. Ann Bauer has written 3 novels, A Wild Ride Up the Cupboards, The Forever Marriage, Forgiveness for You, as well as Damn Good Food, a memoir and cookbook co-authored with Hell's Kitchen founder, Mitch Homer. Yeah, that's wonderful. Her essays, travel stories, and reviews have appeared in Elle, Salon, Slate, Redbook, Dame, The Sun, Washington Post, Star Tribune, New York Times. So you're kind of famous, Ann. Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say.
See, and I just followed her on Twitter and thought she was very witty and was not afraid to say what she felt. And I always admire that in anybody on social media. And then I found out she was also a writer. So,
See.
Oh, well, thank you, Kathryn.
which makes you even more interesting, I guess.
Witty, unafraid is what lost me every single one of those writing venues that you listed.
Oh,
Now, this
that
next
does
line.
not surprise me.
Yeah, there you go. This next line I'm going to read tells me that you are exactly my kind of person. Because you started the conversation saying that you kind of grew up in Minnetonka, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'm going to read the line, which I know that Ann and I would get along because we think the same way. So now remember, she grew up in Minnetonka. Maybe there were some problems because the next line is, Ann lives part-time in St. Paul, Minnesota. Could you get any further away from Minnetonka?
Right? Yeah,
It does almost feel like St. Paul's a different country.
It does.
it really is.
Sometimes.
And people in Minnetonka never come here. It's a thing.
No.
No, they don't. They're not crossing that bridge for
They
anything.
don't acknowledge it.
Nope.
It's kind of grody. They're not into the whole river thing.
No.
Yeah.
You know what's really weird about that, Ann, is I grew up in North Minneapolis, but I have my whole life since I was 16, 17 years old. I went over to St. Paul and I said, this town is completely different than Minneapolis. I love them both. I love Minneapolis. I love St. Paul for different reasons. We're very, very lucky. I love St. Paul. It's a great town.
We enjoy it. We kind of have our little pocket. We loved that we were near Wisconsin there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That does make sense. So how did the writing sound? Okay, how old were you when you said, you know what, I want to be a... Because I think everybody at 16 wants to be a writer.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody does. But how did we find out when we're Ann Bauer, how did we find out we actually could write?
Well, I was about 16, actually.
There you go. That's...
There you go. I moved to St. Paul, interestingly.
Really?
I escaped here, and now I've escaped here again. Moved to St. Paul. I could have moved. It was like Bangladesh as far as anyone
Yes.
I knew was
Yep.
concerned. Moved to St. Paul when I was 16, and I went to work as a cocktail waitress at, oh God, will you remember, Bigelow's? It was
Sure.
Ramada Inn on 94. I lied about my age. I got a job as a cocktail waitress, and that's what I did. And then I started writing about it.
Oh.
And it was just sort of weird and interesting enough. The poker games after the shifts were over, we went to the Blue Horse. Do
Oh,
you
God, I love
remember?
the blue. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
For a tableside Caesar salad. This is what I was doing. And you know, it was all just brand new to me. And so when I started writing about this and submitting those pieces, it had enough edge and enough specificity that I got into some programs. I got into a program at the university that took everyone to London, and we studied Shakespeare and at
Ooh.
Stratford-on-Avon. And then I went to the University of Iowa and did their undergrad and then the graduate program in writing.
I think it's a magnificent story because I was just thinking about this. The one thing that struck me is I grew up in North Minneapolis, but Minneapolis in general is a very Protestant city, whereas St. Paul is a very Catholic city. And that causes a lot of problems for some. I mean, not
It was.
completely.
Yeah, it did.
I don't
Yeah,
know
it
if
did.
is
Yeah, it
anymore.
used
know
to be,
about
I
it
suppose.
anymore.
Yeah, probably not anymore. But when I was a kid, yeah, like a a lot of Protestants in Minneapolis and a lot of Catholics in St. Paul. And I suppose that maybe that's why I loved it, because they were so different. Twin cities, but they were totally different twins.
True. I mean, my experience was so different. I had a Jewish parent and a Catholic parent.
Oh, there you go.
And so wherever we were odd.
Who was odder, mom or dad?
Oh, Dad.
Definitely.
Mom just fit right in. Dad was
sure.
an East Coast Jew who moved to Minneapolis in 69, I think.
That must have been a big culture shock.
Big culture shock. He has said for years, he's still out in Minnetonka, and he has said for years, I can't believe I moved to a city that named its airport after Lindbergh.
Yeah.
That was
Charles
his
Lindbergh.
big kind of, but he loved my mother. And they,
So the fact that Charles Lindbergh actually hated Jews and supported Hitler. But other than that, Ann.
other than that, the love of a good woman. See, we're getting back to that 44 years. The love of a good woman
Wow.
will surpass all such issues.
You know, so great about that. And once again, I grew up in North Minneapolis. It was Catholic, Black, and Jewish. So my whole life, that's who people were. They were either Jews, Catholics, or Black. And then I got out in other parts of the world and I went, what's this Protestant thing? What's that all about?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I got nothing against Protestants, don't get me wrong, but I just had never been around them before. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, Ann, but I do have to bring this up. I am, many friends of mine and the family are Jews, and I cannot believe what's going on right now in the world. I just can't believe it, Ann.
I mean, I'm not so sure that I'm as surprised about what's going on in the Middle East as I am about the way that it has redivided people here.
Yep.
In a way that feels, frankly, a little false to me. Do you see why no one will hire me anymore?
Is that why? So you just don't fit in anywhere, Ann?
Well, you know, I mean, I understand having a strong feeling about, you know, whether or not Jews should have a homeland or Palestinians should be, you know, razed to the ground. These are big, sort of foundational warfare issues. They're not our issues. They are not. And I have seen more people divide over this, become frenzied over this in a way that just feels out of sync with who they are.
I agree with that 100%. Once again, I am very, very lucky, and I promise I'll move on after this, but I had to bring it up, finding out your heritage and the rest of it. But my whole life, grew up around Jews. I still, to this day, many of my dear... Well, first of all, if I can be a friend of Gelfand, who's the most Jewish Jew I know, I could be anyone's fan.
Well,
You know?
He's so much more than just a Jewish man. In so many ways.
Gelfand. I love that man. But an example of why I love the culture so much, and I do to this day, and I'm very open about the fact that I have many friends who are Jews and shut up around me with that. That's all I'm saying. That works for me. But at about 7 years old, I walked into a deli in North Minneapolis on Plymouth Avenue. Plitman's. I still know Michael Plitman really well. Was wonderful. I got a roast beef sandwich, and the guy behind the counter said, "What would you like to drink?" And I said, "Ann, nice
Milk?
Catholic."
Did you say milk?
You are correct,
no.
ma'am. Well, I'm a Catholic. You know, I grew up Catholic. So the greatest thing, it's the first time I ever learned to speak any Yiddish words. He said, "Fe goyish anachas," which means Gentile pleasures.
You did that so
Did he give it to you?
No, he did not give it to me. He said, "No, we're not doing that in this. It's not going to happen."
You know, for a
Have a
goy,
nice
your
Dr.
Yiddish is amazing.
Oh, I can speak some Yiddish. There's no question about that. I grew up, like I said, what I did when I grew up in a Jewish, Black, and Catholic neighborhood, I was Catholic, so I fit in there. I fit in and I didn't go out of my way to stroke anybody or kiss ass or any of that deal. I am fascinated by other cultures. I really am. The way people grew up fascinates me.
I think you had more of that culture in North Minneapolis.
Yep.
And
Yes.
I'm unclear on your age, but I think you were probably a decade before I was growing up.
Well, let me see now. There might be a 7 at the beginning of my age, and there might be
Oh,
a.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 72, and I talk about that all the time. Actually, I'm 72 years
Mhm.
old.
And so you're about 15 years older. And I think that also, by the time I moved to Minnetonka as a tween in the late 70s, early 80s, that culture wasn't there. It wasn't like, oh, you step into a deli. It wasn't like you have people speaking Yiddish. So that was sort of lost.
As a matter of fact, I have yet to meet another Gentile that can say the word "strera."
Oh my goodness.
Most,
I can't say that.
There you go. I'll bring up one thing, and then I want to talk a lot about your books, Ann, because first of all, you're a terrific guest. You're involved. You're a very interesting person. I really enjoy that. I love to interview people anyway. I always have. I love talking to people since I was a little boy,
Yeah.
right? But I just there's so many things on your descriptor page that I could refer to when talking about. So you taught at Brown University and Macalester College, is that correct?
I did.
Well, tip of the cap. I mean, well, that had to be quite an honor, wasn't it?
Brown University was best professional experience in my life. I've
Yeah, I bet.
never seen students, and obviously they get to choose from the most curious, the most able, the most diverse, but really it was extraordinary. And just a
Yep.
cool place to be.
I could see
Providence,
that.
River
I
on
could see it
fire.
definitely. Yeah, I mean that whole well, McAllister's not exactly a puke hole either. It's an awfully
Puke
nice
hole.
college. Well, I'm just doing
There's a
comparison.
descriptor.
All
You
right.
know.
Okay. McAllister was a little bit more of a at a distance experience. I
I
was
understand.
never tenured. I was always a visiting professor, again, disruptor. I'm not the person you ask to be with you. Well, my husband asked me to be with him for life, but no one else. Everyone else is like, you know, he's got an unusual tolerance level. So McAllister really did not integrate instructors in. It was not as satisfying, I will say.
It's a very political college. I know that politics are very big at McAllister, and,
Yep,
and I'm not saying yes or no or positive or negative, but they really get into their politics over at McAllister. No
they
doubt.
do. They do.
No question
Mhm.
about it. Okay, just one more thing, and I want to talk all about your books after this, but this is a fascinating line here. As I said, Anne lives part time in St. Paul, Minnesota, and travels with her husband, John, a Spanish language computer security expert. What is that all about?
What is that all about? So
I would like to know.
before he hitched himself to me, my husband was living in Spain, married to a Spanish woman, lived in Barcelona,
Ooh,
spoke fluent Catalan and Spanish, and managed the, I guess, equivalent of a help desk in both of those languages. So now he works for, and I won't say which one because we try to keep things somewhat separate since I explode the internet every once in a while. He works for a big high tech company, and because he's so good at not only Spanish language but Spanish culture, and he tends to have all of the accounts in Spain and Mexico and South America.
really?
Hmm.
A lot of traveling.
Pre-COVID, tons. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes
yeah.
total sense. Yeah, no question about it. So we're going all the way back now to, well, this is only 5 years till you were 16 years old because you're 21 now.
Mm,
She
mm,
just goes,
mm.
You're 16 years old. Were you older, younger when you realized, I think I want to write?
I was about, well, oh God, I remember holing up in my bedroom because I was a weird kid, but also reading the entire 12 book series of The Wizard of Oz
Oh,
Wow.
and thinking, oh, this is like, it's like a, it sounds so cliche, a lifeline. It was a portal into something different where I was like, this is much cooler than where I've been. This, this is where I want to be. And so it really was that feeling of absolute love for sinking into someone else's world
Mm-hmm.
and then wanting to do that. And I don't think I ever did it, by the way.
Oh, really?
Fiction wise, I don't think I ever did it. Nope. I am desperately a frustrated fiction writer who's much better at nonfiction.
Isn't
So
that
you-
always the way?
Mm-hmm.
So do you always make the other the bad not a bad choice, but the wrong choice in things? Is that part of your personality?
I always make the difficult choice. Is what I
Difficult. That's a
do.
better way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. So what was it? Okay, when you've decided then I am going to sit down and I'm going to start writing. Do you remember what you first started writing about?
Yeah, it was those experiences in
God,
St. Paul at Bigelow's restaurant. It was the women I knew who used to hang out at an Embers. There's a
sure.
throwback for you
Yes.
on Selby, I think. And so we'd go after work and we'd sit there all night. And I was with a group of people who were literally, when they weren't waitressing, turning tricks to make some money. They were selling drugs. It was a pretty rough, but they were very nice to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an essay about sitting at Embers all night with these people. And that was what caught the attention of not only my teachers, but I have to give him credit for this. My father, who really, I think, raising me, the fact that it didn't kill him was amazing because everything about him wanted to control my every move.
Yeah.
Everything about me was like, oh, no, you won't. But he saw that piece and he said, damn it. I think you're a writer.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, he's a smart man and a realist, and he said, fine.
But that's wonderful to have that. I mean, it doesn't sound like great support, but it is.
Oh, it is totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
And did you know it at the time, though? Did you know it was great support, or do you kind of go, that's kind of half-assed?
Yeah, no, even as much as we have clashed, and we've been clashing now for 58 years. We've been clashing. No, I knew that he stuck with me as much as he would, poke and needle and try to trap me in a box. He stuck with me.
Well, that's good. So did you get along with your father? I mean,
Not at all.
not you didn't get along at all.
Well, no, we had a very tough relationship. He is a man who likes everything under his control, and I am a woman who refuses to be under anyone's control.
I understand that, and completely just by talking to you, you're a lot like this woman I'm married to tell you the truth.
And a lot like the man you're talking to.
Oh, well, I haven't heard Andy say a word yet. You're talking about it. No, what's interesting about that, Ann, and that's the reason I asked you the question, because you can kind of tell if you're the same kind of person that's there, because I never, ever got along with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess because he thought I was doing well and all the rest of it, he died at 60 years old. He left when I was 7. He was taken away in a straitjacket when I was 7 years old. He's put in a mental institution.
Oh,
And so he kind of came and went for a couple of years. Then I didn't see him for decades. But I got a call from the hospital up in, what was the name of that hospital again? Up there, and it doesn't really matter. But I get a call, your father.
Mercy, maybe?
Yeah, it was Mercy.
Yeah,
Mercy
Mercy.
Hospital. It was, absolutely. I get a call from the hospital, and they say, Tom, your father is in the hospital. He's not going to live much longer, and he specifically wants to talk to you. And I said, no, he does not. He and I never got along. He never talked to me. I never spent any time with him. Because, no, specifically, he wants to see you. And I'm like, okay. And I remember talking to Kathryn about this, because I had only known you for a year or two at that time, right?
Yeah.
very short period. So I drove up to Mercy Hospital because we lived in Minnetonka at the time, probably right next door to you, Ann. But I drove up to the hospital. I'm thinking the whole way, what is it that he wants? We never got along. We never spent any time together. He never cared for me. So I get up there, and I was about by 4 or 5 inches the tallest, biggest kid in my family. I need to throw that in because it's important here.
Mhm.
So I get there, and he weighs about 85 pounds. He was a little guy anyway, but he had nothing on whatever. So he points to this chalkboard, and I bring him the chalkboard over, and he lays face down on his chest for a while, and he was writing on it for about a half an hour, and it was literally a half an hour. And then again, it collapsed down on his chest, and he called me over to look at it because he had so many tubes going down his throat he couldn't talk. So I grabbed the chalkboard and I go, what is this going to change my life forever? Is he going to say I'm sorry? Is he going to say, Tom, I love you? Is he going to say something he's never told me before? I turned it around, and it said, get me out of here.
Well, you're like a character who stays in form, right?
Exactly. So you should use that in one of your books. Get
Oh,
me
yeah,
out of
yeah,
here.
I will write the history of Tom Bernard, and that will be in there.
That will be in there. So he dies, even though he was Protestant. My mother was Catholic. They weren't together still. They hadn't been together in 35 years by that time, or maybe longer than that. But my mother called a Catholic priest to come and bless him on his deathbed, which I thought was very nice of her because, it was her deal.
Mhm.
And so he died. And then I'm outside and I'm just kind of looking out the window. And the priest came out, and you got a picture in your mind, Ann, a priest running away down a hospital hallway because he comes over and he touches my shoulder and he said, Thomas, I'm very sorry your father died. And I said, yeah, he probably had it coming. He literally ran away from me.
Yeah.
It was.
He was going to go get a crucifix and some holy water.
You're gonna go get some stuff, but Ann, so not getting along with your father. I'm sorry I got so carried away there, but not very often do I talk to someone who did not get along with their father, which is
Oh.
fascinating in your situation.
And I don't still, but we stick it out.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I wrote about recently was family estrangement, which, I get. It's everywhere. It's in my own family. But I will say that as someone who probably was raised by the wrong parents, we did not mesh.
yeah.
I love them and they love me, and we work it out. And, they are very elderly and they are doing what they're doing out there in Minnetonka in their house with staircases that I think, oh my God, really? But I think there is value in, seeing it through, I guess. Or maybe it's just the life I ended up in. I don't know.
It's a positive. Do you think that the great writers out there, do you think most of them were in the exact same situation? Not all of them, but most of the good ones, do you think were in that exact same family situation?
I guess it depends on who we're talking about. I have a huge spot in my heart for the great writers of the 60s, 70s, 80s, who I think are referred to as the old dead white guys. I love
Yeah.
the John Updike,
Sure.
the Wallace Stegner, and those guys. Yeah, I mean they were hard drinkers, and they were, cheating on various wives, and they were messes of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of baked into the writing deal. These days, writers are more promoters.
Yeah,
The
that's a
writers
good point. Yep.
and those people tend to have much more typical family lives and relationships, I think. You don't hear a lot. In fact, you hear oh so much about, the elite parties and the long-term marriages and the kids who are going off to Ivy League schools among the writers.
Yeah. No, that is very, very true. I've been very, very lucky because, doing the same morning show for 37 years, I got to know a lot of people. And Gore Vidal put out a book called Palimpsest many, many years ago, right? And I never met him in person, but Gore used to call me or I would call him and we would talk on the phone when I'm driving a car or whatever. But I used to talk to Gore Vidal all the time for the exact same reasons you're talking about, because I had never talked to anybody that had the same experiences that he did. And he would not call me Tom. He always called me Mr. Barnard. He always did.
I mean, what a great thing to be on the phone with Gore Vidal.
Oh, God. And it was unbelievable. I learned so much about. He was a brilliant man, but maybe not the happiest person I've ever talked to.
Yeah. And that used to be part of your deal.
Yep.
Oh, unhappy life, but then and I feel like that's shifted somewhat. And if I sound bitter, maybe
No.
it's like being that wretched, I put the blood on the page person really isn't
Yeah.
what's valued right now. Being really great at working the publishing game and being on Twitter, and not on Twitter the way I am, where you offend as many people as you attract, but
it'll happen. I am fascinated talking to authors. I'm very lucky to have known a number of you. It's a different life. Do people who are good writers, really good writers, know that they're not a lot like other people?
I think so.
Yeah.
I've known a couple who I think, oh, you're a really great writer. I met Marilyn Robinson at Iowa.
Oh.
And I think she's extraordinary as a writer. As a human being, she is really not to my taste.
I understand. Yep. I do understand that. But isn't it, what a great thing? Is that what you were kind of looking at when you decided anyway? Because once again, we kind of locked in on that 16-year-old situation. Did the job become everything you thought it would be?
Well, I took a massive detour because I went to college and I went to college. First, I got into that program and went to England, and then I went to the University of Iowa. And I kind of slipped into a more typical mode for, I had my first drink and I had my first boyfriend. I had never done these things. Even while working at that Ramada Inn, I had been this kid who, watched, but didn't indulge in anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a typical college student for about 2 years. And then I graduated, and my very controlling dad said, now you must you must go to work and get a great job for what we've spent on your education. And I couldn't. It was the recession of 1986.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't find anything. And he was just pounding on me day and night. Like, I was able to walk out and get a good, what is wrong? And so, of course, I did what stupid young, I'm going to say women here, if that's okay with you, have done for hundreds of years. I ran away and I got married.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you know you were going to do that, or did it just happen?
It just kind of happened.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yep. I went back to my college town, to Iowa City, to meet some friends because I needed to get out from under the, stifling whatever, and met this guy and thought, oh, he understands me and he's sensitive and he's wonderful, and completely missed the fact that he was a raging alcoholic.
I shouldn't be laughing at that, but
You
completely
know,
missing the fact. But
I was 20 years old, and I thought, oh, he's just Johnny Nolan. Does anyone get that? he's sensitive, and he just needs the love of a good woman. So there I was, and then I married him right on the spot practically, and had 3 children quickly.
And what else? Are we still together?
Oh, we stayed together for 12 years.
For 12 years you did.
We did.
Okay, but now
Yep.
it's a different
Yep.
story.
But the whole time I was like, oh, the ups and downs and the bankruptcies and
Oh God.
the disappearances and I was living that sort of life where you're constantly covering up for the fact that this person is doing erratic things, and you can't explain it. You can't explain to your neighbors, oh, my husband just dipped out for 2 weeks. I have no idea where he is. That's why our walks aren't shoveled. I'm inside with the kids. It was 12 years of just constant shifting ground.
So literally the whole 12 years he would do this kind of thing.
Yep.
God, how did you put up with it?
Well, see, we'd have the big tearful, like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm going to do better. And then it would seem like he was doing great. He'd have a job, and he'd get up and go to work, and I'd think, oh, we got this locked. It's okay. And then I finally learned that that's when I had to pay attention, when everything seemed good. That's when he was like, I'm safe now. And he'd be off spending money on things you can't imagine, or driving around in his truck and drinking all day instead of going to work. And then I'd find out, and by the time I found out, we'd owe tens of thousands of dollars, which at that time was, yeah. So that was my life until I was about 34.
Do you think that, because looking at great writers and the ones that I've talked about throughout my entire career, do you think observing is a great gift and a great horror all at the same time? To be such a great observer, to notice everything makes you a great writer, but does it make you a happy person?
Oh, that was so beautifully said. I hope someone sends me a clip of you saying that, because you have captured exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I observe everything, and I also kind of see ahead.
Yep.
And I don't want to get too, ahead of ourselves here. But I think the reason that Kathryn noticed me is because when COVID first started, I saw some things ahead, and I said them at a time when it was absolutely forbidden to do so.
Yeah.
And, that was kind of the thing all along. But yes, when I was married to my first husband, I could see it happening. I could see this cataclysm sort of unfolding, and I could see it ahead. But at that point, I thought, well, I have these 3 children, one of whom had some significant developmental differences, and I just couldn't figure out how to organize my life any other way.
Isn't it great you were able to, though? I mean, thinking about where you were and where you are now, you did the right thing.
I eventually found a path. I think you always wonder, well, I took this path, so what if I'd stayed with the man? I don't know. But yeah, I eventually got to the point where I said, okay, I have to be responsible here. And I tried to be responsible within the marriage. I tried to be the earner and the person who was running things. And even that didn't work, because he could tear apart as fast as I could build up.
Yeah.
And so finally we divorced, and I was on my own for 6 years. And I actually, I did a pretty good job. I think, my children would have to weigh in on how it worked. I worked a lot. They were alone too much. But I kept a house and food and, clothes and field trip money and managed to get them all through school.
That's wonderful. See, now that is a great. I wish more people could tell that story that you actually stepped up and did the job, where most people would go, "Well, I can't do this all by myself," and would just give up.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to go back and say, my parents stepped up as well, and
Wonderful.
they were a support to me, even though they completely disapproved of every single thing about my life. Everything.
I know about that. Yeah.
They were helpful and supportive.
See how great that is. To have support like that has got to be. That's pretty rare, I bet.
I think it is, and I think it's often the difference between who makes it and who doesn't.
No question. God, your life story is terrific. We're gonna have to interview you about your book sometime, because just talking to you about your life story is fascinating.
Oh,
Because
well, thank you, sweetheart. Those books, I published my last book 9 years ago.
that was 9 years ago.
It was 9 years ago.
I can't-
And I will tell you this, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud, like in a public venue. That book never should have been published.
You're right. You should probably not say that again.
I should probably not say that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah. My other two novels were really good. They were of very high quality. That book was not. And it was never edited. It was handled by a publisher that was flailing and dying, and they did a very bad job with it. And yeah, I almost never talk about it.
What's so great about that is you will talk about it here, which is quite an honor, I think.
I've been listening to you for how long? 30
Really?
years?
Yeah. Well, I've been in the business for 53 years, but I was at KQ for 37 years.
Yeah. No, you were my mornings for 30
Really?
years.
So now, Kathryn, how did you discover Ann?
On Twitter, now X.
Oh, so you just read her posts and that
Well,
kind of
it was
thing?
a lot of COVID stuff because, as she mentioned before, there was all of this when the COVID epidemic was happening. There was all of this stuff on Twitter about how masks didn't work, the shot, blah blah blah. That there was a lot of pushback, and then all of a sudden it just all went away. Like she
Yeah.
said, it just
Yep.
was all deleted, and some voices kept on going, and I admire that because I think that everybody should be allowed to talk about the good and the bad, especially of something that's going to be injected in your arm that hasn't been tested
Or
properly
proven,
or
yeah.
approved or
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
So that's where this all came from. Yes.
See, see how lucky. Where'd Andy go? Would Andy go home? All of a sudden, I look up and Andy's not on the screen
I don't
anymore.
know. Hopefully there wasn't a fire drill and he didn't.
And you can still hear us, I hope.
I can hear you. I can see
Oh,
you.
okay.
So good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Maybe something
Andy
happened.
was maybe had to take a break or something. What's interesting about that is, we're different people, but we have a lot of similarities. And that 12 years ago, when I was 60 years old, this woman came to me that I happen to admire and said, "You know who should stop drinking? That'd be you." And I did. It was just too much of a game. I literally got, it wasn't the first time she brought it up, let me put it that way. But and you always knew that, Kathryn, that I realized that it was just not worth me drinking anymore if I would lose you. Oh, she's going to stab me right in the back, Andy. Hear this?
Drinking and people that have big emotions and big family pathology it's an interesting situation.
It is indeed.
And wow, that was loud.
It was Andy calling.
What? How did he drop?
Why did Andy drop? Now Andy's calling me, Ann. I don't know why he's calling me, because he's
Well, why
running
didn't he
the
just
board.
Text me.
Yeah, we'll figure it
Tell
out.
him to text me.
But oh God, we only got a couple of minutes left with Andy. Andy, one thing I would like you to do, if you can, you are still there, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because I had heard that you were going to come in to do the interview, but then found out Kathryn and I are not going to be there. We're going to be back at the end of May, And if you could come in studio, I would love to sit across the table, all of us, and just sit and talk about it. Because you and I agree on so many things and how things get the way they are and how you get through them. And it doesn't surprise me that you're a great writer, but I also know you're a great writer because you said something about your own book that you didn't really care for it that much. Only a really good writer would say something like that.
Well, thank you. And I would love to come in. I will go to the studio if Tom Bernard is going to be there. I will go anytime.
Was there a reason that you did start listening?
To you?
Yeah.
I don't remember not listening to you.
Really?
I mean, I grew up in Minnetonka, and then St. Paul, as we said. And then I was out of the state for a while, for about 10 years.
Yeah.
But then when I came back, I had small children. And I remember I would drive them to school in the morning. I'd drive one to the preschool and I'd drive one to the grade school and have the baby in the back seat, and you'd be on the radio. And so you are the background voice to my school drop-offs for years.
You know what amazes me about that whole job, and it's such a Minnesota thing. There's no question about it. I was born in Long Prairie, Minnesota, grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and all the rest of it. But what fascinates me about that job, because I started at KSTP, and that's where I am now doing this with the Hubbards. So I start and I'll finish on at the same doorstep. But I have found, and it fascinated me, Ann, because I would meet people and they would be right up for, I never met anybody that ever said to me, yeah, your show's okay. People either love it or hate it. It's just amazing. Are books like that too? Do they either love books or hate them?
No, this is another place where we are alike.
Yeah, there you go.
People either, follow and love me and say, oh, thank you for speaking out, or they are disgusted and appalled.
So you and I shoulder to shoulder on that one.
Absolutely.
No, and you and I, we're going to have to, we have to do an interview. We'll all have to go out to dinner.
I would love that. I would love that. And, those KSTP studios, is that where you?
No, I have my own studio over in St. Louis Park on Highway 100.
Okay.
Literally, I will tell you, and this is the truth, Ann. At KQRS, I wasn't in the studio for 25 years. I always did it remotely. And it was their idea to do it remotely because I think I have a menacing presence, and I don't mean to.
Same.
So we got that in common too.
I'm 5'3", so.
You challenge them intellectually. Is that what it is?
I don't know.
Honest to God, I want to sit down and have a little dinner, 4, 8 of us, so how many ever people want to come, but how it is, because I would love to understand how it is people can either love you or hate you when there's nobody in the middle. I really don't understand how that is.
Oh, you know what, though? I am right there with you. And that, I think it's not a choice thing. I think it just, if you are a divider, it just happens.
Yep, that's true.
And, may as well go with it so I'm going to tell you one quick thing. And I know you have a time limit here. My friend Trish Wood, who was on the Fifth Estate in Canada and now has a podcast out of Toronto, posted something. And she also was sort of a dissident voice who lost a lot of income and a lot of opportunities, as I did early in COVID, mostly because we opposed school closures. And she said, was it even worth it? She posted something recently and said, was it even worth it? And I told her, I met a guy at a bar one day, and he walked up to me and he said, are you Ann Bauer? And I said, yes. And he said, you helped keep me alive during the early days of COVID. He had gotten a divorce in late 2019, and his beloved dog died like 2 weeks before the lockdown. And he said, I was so isolated, and I was so terrified, not of COVID, but by the whole government structure and the way that everything went away. And then one day I found you on Twitter and I started reading, and I would read every day in order to make myself feel like there was one other person out there
Really?
who got it. And I said right there that day, he bought me a beer, we both cried, and I said, okay, this is it. This like all worth it. Don't care. New York Times will never talk to me again, whatever. I am fine with this. If one person heard what they needed to hear during a time that I consider deeply authoritarian, I'm cool. I'm good.
Yeah, you're good to go. You know what? I cannot wait 2 more months to talk to you again, though. You got to pop on once in a while because I have such a hard time, and I think you think the same way. I've been a Democrat. I've been a Republican. I'm kind of centrist now. I don't hate anybody. I don't love anybody. I just don't understand the hatred in America right now over something as stupid as politics.
Nope.
Oh,
I know.
and honest to God, these people, it just, you got to see it my way or I hate you. It's like, what?
Yeah.
We have different lives. We didn't grow up the same way. You know, we're different. I'm not going to have the exact same thoughts and beliefs that you do. We got to get away from that, Ann. I think we do. We got to get the hell away from that extreme political. And I know there's a lot of money in it, and that's what it's all about.
Oh, there's a lot of money and there's a lot of control. And those are the
Yep.
two currencies, right? Money and
Yep.
power.
That's it. So that'll be the next one, Ann. We're going to reach
Yep.
out to you. We're going to talk some politics, and everybody will hate both of us.
Well, everyone hates both of us already. It's good. Except the people who love us. And those
Except for them. Yeah.
those dozen or so, whatever, they can come. I don't know, the Venn diagram of people who love me and people who love you may have to form a club.
They may have to. That's absolutely. You know what? I'd like to say this too. Kathryn is amazing in that she can pick people that she knows I would love to talk to. You're really good at that.
I've been around a while.
Yes, you have. And I absolutely love this interview. And I do want to talk. Anytime you want to pop on, maybe we should get our own show and just do our own show together.
Wouldn't that be fun?
There you go.
We might have
Listen,
to, I'm telling
Andy
you.
has my number now. He can just text me anytime. He can give it to you. You can text me anytime and say, hey, pop in. And maybe I'll do my hair and be on camera. You never know.
And you do the same thing. You got to come in, but yeah, I cannot wait to sit across the table from you in a couple of months, and then we'll go out to dinner afterward or whatever. I am excited to meet you, Ann Bauer. I'll tell you that.
I am excited to meet you both.
Thank you, my dear. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
How do you do this, Kathryn? You're so good at that.
Well, like I said, I kind of know you.
Where did Andy go?
We need to
Extinct.
stop the show.
Okay. That's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Honest to God, Ann Bauer, she's written 3 books, and she doesn't like one of them, which I love about her already. All right, that's going to do it. We'll talk to you about. Thanks for listening.